welcome. Um, just gonna give it a couple of seconds. Um, make sure we're going live. Yeah, and welcome to Let's Play. An introduction to relationship-based play, and this is our second session with myself, Yoni Ejo. I'm a doctor, a social worker, and I'm also an adopted person. And I'll let Keeley introduce herself also.
Hi there, I'm Keeley Craw. I'm based in Glasgow, and for the last 13 years I've been working as a play therapist and a manager. I've currently just set up a new practice supporting women during pregnancy and in the postnatal period who are finding motherhood surprising and difficult. But in the past, I've also worked in education and social work fields too, and it's been a great mix actually for when I went into doing play therapy, because I did a lot of work in supporting looked after and accommodated children, and just all that kind of experience of education and social work really kind of helped inform my play therapy practice too. And it's just lovely to be here. Really looking forward to talking to you a bit more about play, because it's one of my favourite subjects.
Mine too. Just wanted to say that the reason that we've worked on this course is really to give adopters and foster carers some additional tools, because I think my experience of working with adopters and foster carers is that sometimes they need the very practical solutions to caring and to improving the relationships between themselves and their children. So what I was saying earlier to Keeley, that I feel really that I wish I'd had this course myself when my kids were primary age, because I think you don't realise how important it is to just dedicate a little bit of the week to one-to-one play. And so I'm really looking forward to learning a bit more about this session. Could I ask if you are on live or on the replay, if you can make some comments? It would be lovely to hear where you're from, where you're watching from, and if you're currently an adopter or a foster carer. And also to invite friends if you think that somebody's going to benefit from this session. So thank you. So I'll hand over to Keeley.
Thanks, Yoni. Well, as I said, play is one of my favourite subjects. It would be my mastermind subject if I ever sat in that chair. Tonight, really, I just wanted to talk a bit more about the different facets of play, of which there are many, and I'll just kind of focus on a few, and then expand a little bit more maybe on relationship-based play, and maybe kind of give a few examples there so people can kind of see maybe how they could use play to support them even when play with their own child might feel particularly challenging. So I see play as a bit like a diamond, and it's got all these different facets. And at the heart of play really is that kind of the ability to transform. But when we think about play, it really just starts from really the moment a baby is born and that interaction. So you might think, you may have, like, when you've had contact with babies yourself, or just even watch videos, that play really just starts, with like the pulling out of tongues and the mimicking. So you pull out your tongue, might take a moment, the baby will kind of pull their tongue out too. And it's that start, that interaction is like where that kind of playful kindness starts, because play is really innate in us. Even if we don't get the opportunity to develop that, there's a need and a want in us to play. So that kind of very early mimicking is like probably the very first signs of play are seen there, even like in newborn babies. And that play really kind of develops when you're doing all that kind of babble, with all the goo goo gagas, and it's entertaining the baby and they're kind of reciprocating back. It's really where that kind of play starts, and really where you can see how play like that, or all that babble, is really starting the parts of play that help to form and develop language skills. So there's lots of parts of play, really. So I think the parts of play that we're most familiar with are like maybe the physical kind of sides of play, how that kind of develops physical development. So, when children are playing, they're touching things, they're thinking about coordination, eye-hand coordination. When you think of like very young toys, trying to like post things into things, it takes eye-hand coordination, shaking, rattles. It was really starting to form those kind of like gross and fine motor skills. And in that kind of play too, if you think like when children are old enough to start like going down a slide or going on a swing, they're starting to get those kind of physical sensations too. Activate certain parts of our kind of like nervous system. It's got the vestibular system, and it's about kind of how you're going to get that sense of who you are and where your place is in space. So if I lift my hand up like this, I kind of have that my hand is lifted up. And I know that sounds kind of like we take that for granted. It's because we've been doing it for so long. But for some children, if they don't have that, they can kind of lose that kind of sense of where their boundary is and what their body is doing. You might see that have manifested in your own children if they've not had that real opportunity to kind of develop like physical play. Maybe if they've been a child who's been kept in a pram a lot, who maybe was like, and for that they were like late to start walking or to kind of get physical movement.
I've certainly worked with children who struggled with their own physicality and perhaps been quite the traditional word of clumsy. I don't like that word because it's quite loaded, but yeah.
Yeah,
so and
it will present as what like some people call as clumsy because they've just not had that chance to develop that. So in neuroscience, which is like an area that's just really been taken off, but just gives us so much insight into how play really helps, but also just in terms of like how kind of brain development also kind of like impacts on development of ourselves emotionally. What we're seeing in neuroscience is that the more an action is repeated, the stronger a neural pathway becomes. So in the brain, there's like lots of little neurons. I think babies, they come with some neurons already, but they're making something like a staggering something like 10,000 neurons a second. I mean, it's just staggering. Wow. But they need to make connections between that. So I once actually watched a Robert Winston program, and he had a great way. It was like that the more you keep walking along a path, to see you like walking through like a field of wheat, the more you walk along that path, the more kind of defined that path becomes. And when children and adults, because we're still doing it as we learn, because we still always have the capacity to learn, even as adults, even when it feels like we're diminishing, we're not. But the more you practice something, the more it makes like a stronger pathway. So for children who haven't had that experience of like being out of the pram a lot, having the chance to roll, to crawl, to cruise, to walk, and to develop that, those neural pathways aren't as strong, and so it can present then as clumsy. And there'll be other reasons too, why they're just not kind of have like a proper sense of themselves physically. So play is really important part of that. It's really a lot of how children develop physically. You think of a game like football, how much kind of coordination is in there, how the use of motor skills, so they're getting a lot out of that. They're developing a lot of skills at the same time. So that's one facet of play that we're probably quite familiar with. And another one would be the language. So as I kind of said, that kind of starting off really early, the babbling, the goo goo gagas, the silly faces, moving on to singing nursery rhymes with my own children. I just feel like I'm constantly singing nursery rhyme all the time and stuff. But it's so important for their development. And actually, there's a lot of research out there to show how important music is in terms of developing language. And again, how it kind of works on those neural pathways and really strengthens our ability to form and use language. So, there's lots of kind of ways when we play that we're developing language too. And when you think about children who are a little bit older and we're starting to kind of talk about things, so like maybe passing them a shape and you're saying triangle, and they're putting it, say, like in a sorting shape thing, toy, then they're really starting to learn to develop language then. And then you kind of go on and you're forming that. So then later on you're modeling language too. So imagine if you're playing with farmyard characters, but they have little voices and they start to talk to each other. Well, there's a language development in that, and then taking turns, not butting in, how to kind of respond back to each other. So it's really forming language there as well. And obviously that kind of continues as child's play continues to develop, and they're kind of getting to higher level like language skill development. Another really important part of play is the social skills. So again, that starts, very kind of early on. It's often just within the family, or with like an adult, because really a baby and a very young toddler needs someone else to lead the play and sustain the play. But as children get older, as they go into nursery and they go into school, they're really developing those social skills through play. They're very, anyone who got a small child knows how like they're very in their own bubble and it's all me. Yeah. And they're learning about how to kind of to cooperate, to share, to take turns, to get on, to think about other people's feelings. It all kind of happens through play. Again, as they're kind of interacting, sharing a toy, playing football, acting out a game, so they're playing shops or something. They're all learning all the time about the social skills there. And really and from that really is that the learning that kind of contributes to emotional development. So within those social interactions, there's also kind of feelings. So, often with young children, as they're learning, there's a lot of tears because things aren't happening their way, and then it's about reflecting on those feelings. They feel sad or they feel angry, and so they're learning about their emotions through play as well. And when they're kind of taking on, as they get a bit older and they're doing role play, so they're pretending to be doctors and nurses or vets or something, and one's a dog, maybe one's the vet or something. They're learning about relationship and about themselves and about different feelings. And quite often in that play, they're starting to kind of test out, kind of social relationships and emotions as well, just to kind of give that a bit more of an exploration. So they're probably like some of the most familiar kinds of play, and of course that all kind of supports cognitive development in all its elements, and they're the ones we're most familiar with. But what I think is probably less kind of well known, and what Yoni and I really want to focus on in this course, is about how we can use play to develop relationships. So some of that will actually be about emotional learning for the child of themselves, without taking it into too like therapeutic a manner. But it's also about how you can use play to kind of strengthen and develop your relationship with your own child or children. So it's giving you a chance to kind of develop a bond. I
think that's so important. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's so important because I think one of the things that puts off a lot of people who perhaps would have considered adoption or fostering is that not knowing whether the child's going to like them and they're going to like the child, and how that relationship is going to grow when it's not rooted in biology. I think that's really helpful.
And that's how, and it's such a great way of, kind of just kind of like trying to develop that bond in a very, if you can create a very kind of relaxed and safe kind of environment for that child, because play night might not be familiar to them, or it might be quite loaded for them. Maybe they've had quite negative experiences of play before. But what we can do is, and what we hope to do in the 10 module course, the relationship based play course, is really kind of look at how we make play safe and how we can kind of use play to develop these relationships, so you can develop your bond with your children. And give them, it's just a really good way just to give children a chance to feel like they've been listened to and that they've been heard. So, quite often, I keep saying this, but as adults, and there's nothing wrong with words, but, sometimes, with children, they have limited effect because they don't have the words, they don't have the language to structure yet how they feel or to kind of express how they feel, but they can do it through play, so they can show you through play. And and when you can kind of respond back to that, it really helps a child feel listened and heard. And that's really, then children are maybe more likely to kind of open up to you, just to feel kind of more confident in the relationship and feel like they've got like an equal part in that relationship too. And play is always a great way just to kind of rehearse events as well. So, before a child starts something, tries something for real, in play, sometimes they can rehearse that. They can just play it, just test it, just dip their toe in the water a little bit with it. And then if it kind of feels like it went well, then they might do it in real life outside of the playtime. Would
that be a good way of introducing adopted or fostered children to new experiences? Because that quite often is quite a challenge in new environments. Would that be a way of sort of building their confidence by doing it through play first with their adoptive carers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I would kind of give guidance around play is really for the children to kind of take some of the lead on that play, as opposed to like the adult going in with an agenda and trying to kind of like come out with like a box ticked and stuff like that. I'm going to use play today to try and find out this. Often, children are too canny for that. But I think it's just about allowing the children just to kind of do something. But they might well kind of like hit those kind of areas as well that the adult is thinking about. But it will certainly develop their confidence just to feel like they've got an adult who's supportive and can be playful, and that they can feel safe with.
I think, what do you think are the sort of challenges of adults becoming playful? Because it's not always that easy to put people's guards, maybe your guard down enough to.
That's right, and I think there's several things there, isn't there? So one is like the adult's own experience of play. Was it allowed? Was it okay? There's society's kind of views of play, like it's just childish. It can be embarrassing, it can be exposing, and there's things like that to get over too. And I think also when you're trying to establish a relationship as a parent, and there's maybe that kind of sense that I'm thinking of like discipline and authority. It's like, how do I kind of manage to kind of keep that kind of element of my parenting around discipline and kind of show this kind of silly, sometimes playful side of myself too, without kind of feeling like I've just given away all the control I had. But I think actually, certainly I have been silly on many occasions and really just hoped there was no other adults walking past the room while there's so much or how I was dressed up. But I only ever felt that actually kind of coming down to to the child's level in that playful way actually only garnered me respect, because I was actually kind of saying, look, I'm here, we can be playful together and we can both kind of get something good from this. Actually, it's not just trying to say, not to be about being a permissive parent and thinking, they're really cool, they'll play and they'll let me do whatever I want. It's not about that, because actually, within the teaching that we'll do about how to kind of set up play sessions, it is about kind of keeping a safety and a boundary around that. And you do want to kind of still kind of define your role as a parent as well. But I think it's just about being playful with it and just trying to get down to the child's level and use a form of communication that's more natural to most children, not all, but to most children.
Okay. Are there particular approaches that you think, in terms of sort of carving out that time for parents or adopted parents?
Yeah, I think.
Is it regular times, or how does it work?
I think so. I think if nothing else, if there's only one thing in particular, it would be about a commitment to it. Not just that we'll try this and then just, if you've got children and you're also trying to juggle work and if you've got a dog to walk and all these other things can kind of get in the way. And it's about actually just kind of making this time a priority, because when you do that, you're saying to the child as well, you're my priority, and this is important to me, this play is important, and this time to build our relationship is important. So I think it's about, one of the key things that you can give, one of the strongest messages you can give, is to make that the priority and stuff. So to put the mobile down, to think, I'll deal with the work emails later, this is my this is where my time is committed just now, to be with my child and to play and develop our relationship through the play.
No, I think that's a really, really good point. I think it's sometimes not prioritised enough.
And I think it's just things that play is a bit of a Cinderella, really. It's like everyone just thinks it's just people don't often see the value in play, and that's what I really hope we can show in this course too, is how valuable play can be, so that it's something that people can take away and always have with them. Is that knowledge of the value of play and how they can use it, how they can facilitate the transformative elements of play, but also how they can help their own children kind of just grow through the play.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions from adopted parents. I've got one. The first one is, I've got a 5 and a 6-year-old, both boys. They play together constantly, which is nice until it turns aggressive. If one annoys the other, which does happen quite a lot, then it escalates from shouting to teasing and grabbing each other. I'm wondering how I could stop them and keep them myself from getting angry.
That's the play that my mum always used to say, it'll end in tears.
Yeah.
I think that's good. It's quite common for most children, isn't it? It's about, especially at that age, they just don't know where to kind of stop. So and then it kind of very quickly flips from like play that was quite nice. It might have been a little bit kind of boisterous. It might have been a bit rough and tumble 1 minute and everyone's giggling. And then just within the blink of an eye, it becomes like someone gets like very upset, and then it can become quite aggressive and not fun. So I think that's quite common. I think I've just lost my picture. Oh, here we are. I'm back on the screen. So I guess in terms of how they could support the child, I think it's probably like, I guess it's just about trying to kind of see just before it kind of tilts over, if the parent can put tips into that, and maybe just trying to kind of maybe like, I would just like do something like I get an imaginary remote control out and pause the play for a minute, and maybe it's like I just share an observation there. Oh, wait a minute, let me just I'd be get my remote control out my pocket, and I'd be pressing the pause button for a moment and just reflecting. Do it in your own way, but maybe be kind of creative with that, and just say, oh, it looks like this play has been like really fun, but maybe it's starting to not be fun anymore. I notice A is starting to tease B a little bit, and B looks a bit upset about that. And I think it's just the observations have to be simple, but it just starts to kind of help the children to start thinking about the other. And at 5 and 6 years old, they are still quite young. They're not quite as egocentric as a toddler, but they've still got a lot to learn in terms of social skill. And I think, maybe it's doing that, maybe even think, what could they like do differently? Or like not keep doing, and then once you've had that little chat, and it really doesn't have to go on for long, you're just talking like a very brief chat, get that remote control and press play again and let them play. So I think it's just, it's a good chance just to kind of help them kind of just reflect and think, but I would just keep it light and playful and creative, so it doesn't feel like every 2 minutes they're being lectured. But there's ways to do it, so hopefully that would be helpful.
No, that's really good, thank you. The second question is from an adopter who's saying they've got a 3-year-old and they want to encourage independent play for her daughter, who's an only child. She's tried a lot of things, but rarely finds that the child will take herself off into a world of her own. And it's an issue when she's trying to do other things. And the child needs a lot of reassurance and guidance to play alone. What's your thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the 3, so they're still quite young. And if they're an adoptive child, then that means that they didn't establish a secure attachment early on. So this is probably why and I get the parents' frustration completely, because sometimes you just want to get on and make the tea. And it's hard, when you can't just set them down for 5 minutes, and you don't always want to put them like in front of the TV either. They're probably quite young, and I guess it's just this is where the relationship-based play course would really help, because it'd be about helping kind of establish that relationship and helping the child get like a secure sense of attachment, which doesn't happen overnight. But the play can certainly kind of help with that. I just wonder if there's ways that they can like maybe kind of set up like a little play activity, say like if they're in the kitchen, so the child can still kind of be near the adult, but they can be playing, and then while I don't know, you're peeling your potatoes or something, they can still be kind of dipping in and commenting on the play a little bit, so the child still feels like the adult is there, instead of them like being in separate rooms. Maybe something like that would kind of help as well, just as like trying to be more practical about it. 'Cause, this child, would have had like some very difficult experiences. They won't have formed the early secure attachment, so they will be kind of feeling anxious to be left on their own, yet not able to kind of regulate or kind of manage those feelings yet. So they will want the contact with the adult more, but I also understand as a parent, because I'm in a similar boat with a very young child. It's really hard just to get on and just like get the tea done, and it can be frustrating, but maybe if they can just keep the child in close proximity, maybe if it's just even something like colouring in or something, or a toy that they really like, and they can just play there while they kind of get on with whatever they need to do, but just so that the child can still see the adult, will probably be really helpful.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. It'd be lovely if people watching on the replay post what was their biggest sort of takeaway, what was the thing that left them, they were left with that really moved them or interested them. Do you want to just give us a little taster of what we're going to cover next Thursday, next week, Keeley?
Yeah, I think we're just to kind of expand a little bit more on how play can be useful, and maybe we did a blog post this week just about kind of play when a child isn't verbal for whatever reason. So it might just be nice just to kind of tap into that. So I'll maybe draw from the case studies I use in the blog where the children weren't actually physically able to verbalize. But I've also worked with some children who, they could chat fine with their friends, anybody really, but when they came into the play therapy room, they went very quiet, but still play was powerful. And I think it'd be really nice because I think there will be people out there who are fostering or adopting children where verbal communication is really difficult for lots of different reasons. Maybe the child's on the autistic spectrum, for example, or selective mutism. So I would just like to maybe kind of dip into that just to kind of give some good examples of how powerful this play can be. And I think just to think about how it will look, when you build a relationship through play, how it can, something will happen, but it will look different for everybody. So maybe we can do some kind of work on thinking around that.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. So we're going to be here same time, 8 o'clock on Thursday, next Thursday, and look forward to seeing everyone there. So thank you for your time. Great that you tuned in, and see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.